Greetings yet again, students and acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to our archives. Darth Bane, the author of the Rule of Two, was one of the most powerful and influential members in all of the Order's history. Unlike many ambitious Sith of the past, he did not simply reorganize the Sith Order, but he destroyed them and entirely remade them. This, as we know, is the Rule of Two. However, this holocron will not be focusing on Bane's legacy, but rather the Dark Lord himself. In Darth Bane's lifetime, he acquired much knowledge and many abilities which set him down the path of destruction and glory. Bane was a visionary, and he did not acquire power for power's sake, and only kept around that which was useful to him. He was not sentimental, and he cared nothing for riches or relationships whatsoever. For Darth Bane, value was measured by its means to reaching his own ends, even if that meant the possibility of destroying his very body. Despite this though, Bane did not care much for trinkets or magical artifacts, not unless they actually could provide him with something useful. However, there was something that he did latched onto quite a bit, or should I say, something that latched onto him. Today, we will be talking about one of Bane's most intriguing assets and most valuable possessions that he carried with him, an artifact known as the Orbalisk armor. For those of you who have read the Darth Bane trilogy of novels, you will be quite familiar with this, and today we will be doing a full breakdown of this armor and one of the rarest and most valuable artifacts that he ever carried with him. Not to mention, an armor that made the Dark Lord practically invincible, but also why it almost ended the entire Sith Order. Without further ado, the Orbalisk armor. Darth Bane first encountered the Orbalisk when he was searching for the holocron of Freed Nad. Around this time, Bane was going around the galaxy looking for as much Sith knowledge that was available to him and that the Jedi had not yet taken, similar to how Luke Skywalker would do many millennia later. This led Darth Bane to the secret hidden trove on the planet known as Duxon. After breaking into the chamber where the holocron was being held, Bane immediately sensed that he was not alone, as he heard the sound of chittering and slurping. Looking up, he noticed that the ceiling of this long sealed off chamber was crawling with strange looking arthropods that greatly resemble our world's horseshoe crab, but minus the tail. Anyway, these chitinous insectoids didn't do much but mindlessly crawl over one another, so Bane decided to cautiously proceed deep within the chamber in search of Freed Nad's holocron. However, as soon as his hand closed around the holocron, one of the Orbalisks fell off of the ceiling and onto his shoulder. These creatures' acid melted straight through his cloak and even his armor, and its many sharp teeth bore into his shoulder and latched onto him. Any attempt to pull it off was futile. This creature was followed by another and another until all the Orbalisks came raining down from the ceiling directly onto Bane. He tried slicing one in half with his lightsaber, but miraculously, all it did was simply bat the creature away, the lightsaber blade glancing harmlessly off of its thick shell. Tucking the holocron tight, Darth Bane made a run for the exit of the chamber, using a massive force push to send back the waves of creatures so that he could make his escape. Later, Darth Bane would learn from Freed Nad's holocron that these parasites were called Orbalisks and that they literally fed off the dark side within the host that they latched onto. However, in exchange for the dark energy they fed off of, they released chemicals into the host's body that increased his strength, speed, and agility, and even their connection to the dark side itself. He also learned that the Orbalisk would continue to grow over his body until they fully encased him. However, the holocron also gave specs to create a cage-like helmet and gloves that would prevent the parasites from growing over his hands and face while he slept. Darth Bane took the Orbalisks with acceptance and decidedly treated them as a gift from the dark side, even though in many respects they were in fact a curse. They were very painful to wear as they continuously chewed on him and fed. But of course, with the more pain that he felt, meant Bane would simply use it to draw upon the dark side. The more dark side energy he took in, which in turn caused the Orbalisks to gorge themselves and release those chemicals that made him even more powerful, creating a cycle of strength while also providing nigh invincibility, as not even lightsabers could cut through the Orbalisk armor. Bane would go on to use this to his greatest advantage, altering his lightsaber form to focus almost exclusively on offense, since he required no defense whatsoever when wearing the Orbalisk armor. He was an absolute terror on the battlefield, and his his apprentice Darth Sana noticed this change. She tried on one occasion to test the limits of the Orbalisk by conspiring against Darth Bane. 6 former Sith assassins showed up to fight him with vibroblades and electropikes. Even with the electropikes set to max power, which the novel then says is enough to kill a fully grown bantha, they still could not pierce the Orbalisk armor. However, it did seem to hurt the Orbalisk somewhat, and therefore Darth Bane as well. But the Orbalisk armor was not without its severe concerns and massive drawbacks. Firstly, while it made his towering appearance even more intimidating, it revoked the one thing he needed most at this stage in his plan, that being stealth. The Orbalisks made him stand out. Even with clothes on, he looked incredibly massive. This meant he had to live in seclusion, entirely staying at the camp and having his apprentice do his will in the galaxy. Secondly, and even worse, the chemicals that the Orbalisk fed him also made him incredibly volatile and prone to fits of uncontrollable rage. Bane once mentioned that it was important to control the dark side and not let it control you. But this sort of thing went out the window when he was trying fruitlessly to create his own holocron and kept failing. At one point, when he failed with a holocron, he lost control and blacked out, giving into the dark side and the chemically induced rage that he was being pumped with. In a hurricane of fury, he destroyed his entire camp without his knowledge or control. Another time, when Zana had conspired against Darth Bane, he had almost killed her in a fit of rage without even giving her a chance to explain herself. Afterwards, he realized that if he had killed her then and there, he would have had to start all over with a new apprentice, flushing 20 precious years down the drain in a moment of pure fury. And finally, the third and most egregious of all the dangers that the Orbalisks posed, if one of them were to somehow die. It would spend its last moment flooding Bane's body and system with a toxin that would break him down on a subatomic level, killing him in a matter of days, or perhaps even hours. Bane did eventually concede that the Orbalisks had become more of a problem than they were useful, but none of his research yielded a way for them to be removed without destroying the host, though it did seem as though they had somewhat of a weakness towards electricity. But this had yet to be fully tested. The test would come through though as a trial by fire when Bane and Zana would face down a death squadron of Jedi. The two Sith almost destroyed them, but as Darth Bane was unleashing a storm of force lightning, one or two of the Jedi forced a force bubble around him, encasing the Sith Lord in his own lightning, and causing him to electrocute himself entirely. This killed not one, but all of the Orbalisks, and would have killed Darth Bane if he was not saved by a mystical healer who used his talents to save the Dark Lord, marking the end of the Orbalisk armor, something that was essentially utilized first by Freed and Nad. The Orbalisk armor essentially made Darth Bane invincible and impenetrable. The only thing that could break through it was essentially force lightning. And when Darth Bane was wearing the armor, he was considered to be one of the most ferocious fighters that the galaxy had ever seen, as it flooded his body with pain and a chemical that made him stronger, faster, more durable, and more susceptible to the dark side itself. It was absolutely incredible that Darth Bane was able to accomplish as much as he did, and wear the Orbalisk armor as long as he did. In the end though, if Darth Bane had continued to wear the Orbalisk armor, it would have eventually killed him. So now, for those of you who have never read the Bane novels, what do you think of this armor? Do you think it was worth the amount of power and defense for all of its drawbacks? And what are your thoughts on the most powerful Sith armor in all of the Star Wars lore? Let us know your thoughts down below and other aspects of the lore that you would like to see highlighted in an upcoming holocron. As always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and I hope that you have a great day.